Alright, this is going to be a PvP breakdown. We're going to go over protections, damage multipliers, resistances, what they all mean. This is going to be for beginners, intermediate, and maybe a refresher for more experienced players. Let's begin. Alright, so as everybody probably knows, if you played the game at all, you've got different kinds of protections. We've got frontal guard, being this one here, with the little frontal guard icon. We've got SAs, and you've got iframes, which is this red one here. Right, so we can see those on the skills, for instance. This says super armor on it. This one will say invincible, and this one will say frontal guard, or forward guard, sorry. So let's start with SA. So SA is the yellow icon like that. While you're in SA, you can't be CC'd outside of a grapple. So you can still be grabbed, but you can't be knocked down, stunned, knocked back, floated, stiffed, anything like that. You can, or you do rather, still take debuffs. So if somebody was to cast a slow on you, and you're in your SA, the slow will still apply, you will still be slowed. If someone casts a dot on you, a burn or a poison or anything like that, it still applies to you. It's only the hard CCs that do not work. You still do take damage throughout it, all of that's the same. So let's move on to frontal guards. So for frontal guards, it does exactly what it says. It guards your front, right? The front being a 180 line in front of you. Anything in front of that 180 line, that's going to be blocked by your frontal guard, and then anything behind that, you're going to get hit by it. The difference between a frontal guard and a super armor, which I can't exactly show you here, but your frontal guard has its own block meter. So when you take damage, you're going to see a little icon exactly the same as this, but with a number pop up on the left. That'll start getting eaten away down from 100. Once it hits 0, you lose your block. You've basically broken your guard, right? But as long as everything's hitting that frontal guard, you're taking 0 damage. Any CCs that hit that frontal guard also don't CC you, so that includes everything that the SA has, minus the grab again. But also, the benefit of frontal guard, besides not just taking the damage, is debuffs don't hit you through frontal guard. If someone casts a slow in front of you over here, or tries to apply a dot or anything from the front, if it hits your frontal guard, it doesn't actually apply to you. Alright, so let's move on to iframes. Iframe is an invincibility frame. If any of you have played fighting games, you'll understand what that is, but for the most part, as long as you've got this red icon here, you can't take damage, you can't be grabbed, you're invincible to everything. It's basically the best state to be in, as far as avoiding all kinds of damage and CCs and everything like that. So the big thing about PvP when you're moving around is going to be trying to stay protected. Right? You want to always have some kind of protection up. When you drop it like that, that little gap there from here to there, I could have been CC'd there had I been fighting somebody. If they were to cast a CC at me, I would have been knocked over. So the idea is to try and keep your protections up as much as possible, and that's part of how you PvP in this game. Right? You want to keep your protections up, make sure you always got something going. Different classes obviously have different protections, better and worse. We're not going to get into class specifics now. Let's move on to damage multipliers, right? So we've got different multipliers. We've got back attack, down attack, crit attack, air attack, and they all have different values, both for PvE and PvP, but because this is for the purpose of PvP, we're just going to stick to those values. But an example here would be Serpent Ascension. So you can see there it does floating on hit, it also does air attack, and it also has down attack, the blue text there. Now, an air attack is while they're in the air. If you hit them with an attack that has air attack modifiers on it, it will deal those modifiers as long as they're airborne. So if you hit them with this ability here, it's going to float them while they're in the air. It also counts as an air attack. It also does work on classes that happen to be in the air, so say Lans flying around. If you have an air attack that can shoot them out of the sky, like an Awakened Zerk, it will apply that multiplier. We've got down attack as well on that attack, so essentially if somebody is grounded, so they've been bound or they've been knocked down and they're on the floor, down attack's still the down attack multiplier. Crit attacks are essentially just your crit rate, so for instance, again we'll use this ability, the critical hit rate on that is 100%, which means it's going to guaranteed do crit damage, right? Crit damage is its own multiplier, we'll go over them shortly. And then the last one would be back attack. So if you hit an enemy from behind with any attack at all, doesn't have to have back attack on the actual ability, none of them will, but it'll apply the multiplier. So to go over the multipliers, we have back attacks, that's 120% bonus damage in PvP. Down attacks is 120% in PvP. Critical hit is going to deal 200% in PvP, so it's going to deal double damage basically. And air attack is going to be 170% in PvP. Now, don't get too caught up in those numbers. You pretty much always want to be having down attacks if they're on the floor or as part of your combo. Back attacks are always going to be something that you're trying to do, whether it's PvE or PvP. If you get someone on the ground, you want to go behind them and back attack them while they're on the ground, so you're getting back attack and down attack modifiers. Air attack is the least used, I would say, out of the bunch, just because it depends more on does your class use floats as their main CC or not. If you're getting a lot of knockdowns on a class, let's say you're playing Scholar or you're playing Valk, you're not really floating people very often, so you're not getting air attack modifiers on them anyway, and it comes down to does your class have air attacks. So those will be the 4 main types of damage multipliers that we're going to be looking at. Beyond that though, we've also got grabs. So now a grab, let's go over to these dummies over here. A grab goes through all CC, all protections except iframe. Alright, iframe takes you out of the game, but obviously if you're unprotected, you got SA, you got frontal guard, you can be grabbed. Alright, all grabs are unprotected when you press the button, but if it lands, it puts you into a protected state. So you see the first grab I did there was a SA, so super armor, and the second one was an iframe. Whenever you grab a target, the grab portion, the actual button, is unprotected, but if it lands, you become protected. Right. Alright, let's go over CCs now. So there's a couple of different kinds of CCs. We've got stun, float, bound, knockdown, grabs, and then finally freezing. With freezing though, there's only a couple of classes that actually have that. So that's going to be the least common one that we see. But let's start with stiffness. Right. So when you stiff somebody, it'll last for 1.5 seconds. If you want to see what stiff attacks you have, you can always come up here, and this is the same with protections and everything. It'll show you here what kind of CCs the attacks have, and you can click stiff. Right? That'll show you which ones have stiffness on them. So you'll see here, if I stiff him, 1.5 seconds, and then he comes back to his normal state. Ignore that little timer there, we'll go over that after. We've also got stun. So stun will lock a target in place, standing, for 3 seconds. Right? So if I do this next to him, he's stunned. See how he just kind of wanders around for 3 seconds? He's still got the thing on his head, and now he's able to move again. Alright, now let's move on to down smashes. Down smash is essentially a CC extender. They're unreliable. All down smashes for all classes have a 30% chance of actually working. To check your down smashes, I know it's on blade spin, but I'll just show you here anyway. We can go to down smash, go down to blade spin. Here it'll say down smash. See how it's got air attack, down attack? Those are the other ones we spoke about earlier with the modifiers, and now we have down smash. Okay, down smash, what it's going to do is when they're on the floor already and you use a down smash attack, you have a 30% chance of knocking them back while they're on the floor, so they'll roll backwards. Alright, so if I do this to him, he's on the floor, I'm going to come over here, see how he gets knocked back? That little knockback there was the down smash. That's how you know that it worked. It's not reliable, 30% chance. It's a nice to have. If they get down smashed a bunch, you can extend your combo, get more hits in. So now we're going to look at resistances. Right. If you press your player menu, press P, go to the battle stats over here, you can see you've got different resist. Right. This is the RNG portion, which people hate about BDO, but it's there, so let's go over it. We've got stun, stiff, freezing, resist. Alright, we've got grapple resist, knockdown and bound, knockback and floating. As you can see, they pair certain CCs together, certain types of CCs. Right? I've got a 35% chance to resist. Now, the way this works is if I put different crystals on, maybe I'll chuck on this one. It's got a resist crystal, 25% stun stiff, right? If I apply that, these numbers will change, and you can see now I've got 65% to stun stiff, 65% to knockdown. Right? What that means is, if I have, let's say 65% knockdown resist, and your build happens to have 10% ignore knockdown resist, then when you go to knock me down, I'll have a 55% chance, so 65 minus your 10% ignore resist, you'll have a 55% chance of knocking me down. In PvP it's capped at 80%, so I could even have all these at 100% if I wanted, and they will only be valuable up to 80% anyway. For ignore resist, you have things like your Kudum, where it has ignore or resist 10%. You've got, say, your PvP crystals, your Elkars, ignore or resist 10%. You have 2 of those, 20%, plus your Kudum, that's already 30%, right? Then you can also add in additional ignore resist. So if we go like this, you got all these ones. These aren't the ones that I've created, these are the materials. But you can look at these kind of ones, right? Ignore grapple 10%, ignore knockdown bound 10%. So you can start to build your character, if it's required, around ignoring the resist that you normally throw out there, for instance. So if I always use grabs, I might want to add some ignore grapple resist so that I can get through your resistances and I don't get fucked by RNG. This is something that's going to be personal preference. Some classes do better with it, some classes don't need it. You can play around with it yourself. I'm not going to go into that too much further. Alright, now lastly, all CCs have a value to the CC immunity meter. Alright, this is probably the most confusing part for some people to understand. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. Each CC has a different value. So this is a stiff. The stiff has 0.7 value, right? If I go for a grab, it's going to have 1 value. There's a 1. If I add them together, 1.7, right? It caps out at 2. So if you hit 2, they're going to become CC to any further immunes, right? So if I grab him, then I do that. See how it says immune now? He's hit the 2 limit, which means anyone else, anyone around him, including myself, can no longer CC him. It's to stop people getting knocked on the floor and then just getting CC'd by 10 people hitting them and never being able to get up, right? So when you're creating a combo structure, your combo structure, especially for a 1v1 at least, in open world, node wars, larger scale, it's all about staying protected. But for a 1v1 combo structure, what you want to be doing is essentially not capping their CCs. You don't want to cap their CC meter, right? So if I go like this, and I float him, cool, do an attack, float him again, I've gotten 2 CCs out in that time, right? So the idea is to get your initial CC, do a couple of filler, well not fillers, but a couple of damage attacks, whether they're buffs, pre-buffs, whatever you want to do. Get a couple of attacks in, go for your second CC, and then do the end of your combo. Alright, different classes have different combo structures as to whether they have buffs in the first half and like an ender that deals all the damage, whatever it is, right? Go look at your class guides for that. But a standard combo structure is going to be one type of CC, into an attack, into a second kind of CC, and then into your ender. And that allows you to get all those kinds of attacks off before he gets up, right? So the easiest way to look at that is going to be, what does each one provide as far as a CC immunity, right? Alright, lastly we're going to go over pre-buffs. Alright, so all classes will have different kind of pre-buffs, but for the most part, every class has what we call an E-buff. Now, this is Shift E, some will be Forward C, some might be Shift Q. They're all called E-buffs as far as BDO players are concerned. But if you have a look at it, all classes are going to have this. Not necessarily these stats on it, but this one gives me AP 20 for 30 seconds, accuracy rate 20% for 30 seconds, recovery 50% on HP and WP. And it's a stun around me and super armor, right? It's basically my Super Saiyan button, right? You want to go, alright, I want to do as much damage as possible, I've got everything else rolling, all my consumables, all my other shit. Let's E-buff as well to give myself as much damage as possible when I go in there and do what I have to do. Alright, I realized while I was editing this shit that it's going too long. So I was going to add in accuracy versus evasion. I'll make that into a second guide. So for all you guys getting fucked by evasion players, we'll go over that in my next one. Thanks for watching.